Hello, this is Michael Gray with the Frequency Genome Project. So I'm sitting here on the sand dunes down in San Diego. Just came back from a ChatGPT conference in Las Vegas, learning how to make some marketing materials and do some research with the chatbot to help me with the Frequency Genome Project and lay out my business model and these types of things. And as I was going through that process, I was talking with people about the protocols that I'm developing, right? The meditation, the breath work, the superhuman protocol that is walking people through exercising with oxygen, PEMF technologies, PEMF, I just like to say PEMF, and red light to put the body in an optimal physiological functioning before I put them into a float tank with psychedelics to push through psychological blocks and traumas and pushed into altered states of consciousness. And then healing in barometric chambers and saunas and things like that. And this whole protocol and mindset with breath work, meditation, daily routines, and what it is, that intellectual base of knowledge and protocols and practices that I'm developing. And I was explaining to them it's about putting people into optimal physiological and psychological states, right? And people were with me on most of that. But then I would talk about getting them in the tank and getting the traumas out of the body. And they say, oh, so it has a mental health component about it. And I would just kind of like duck my head and hide and be like, I don't know how to explain exactly the level of mental illness that I'm trying to cure, and the level of mental illness that exists on the planet, right? Like, we all know, we all have standard definitions of mental illness, but we don't have a standard definition of optimal psychological functioning. And from my perspective, when the body is not functioning optimally, optimal physiological functioning, optimal psychological functioning are the same thing. They're two sides of the same coin for me, right? And that's a very hard concept for people to grasp. And when I try to explain what is optimal psychology, it becomes a spiritual conversation or something outside the paradigm that most people are willing to accept, right? That is the idea that your brain and your sense of self can be functioning in a non-stressed out state 24 hours a day. And anything short of that is mental illness. Like, what are you talking about? Well, when you go to bed at night, there's a little gap before you lose consciousness, right? And when you wake up in the morning, there's a little gap, right? Like right before you wake up, where you're in between waking and dreaming. That right there is another state of consciousness. Some people will just say it's theta, but it's not just theta. When you sit and you meditate, you're syncing up the electrical signals in your brain, and you're getting to that place in between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. And there's a place of nothingness, a void, right? A subjective experience, but the objective reality is the signals syncing up in the body, okay? That right there is the basis of the balanced mind, the gray point, I call it. Through training your breath rate and training your focal plane of awareness, you can stay there. That is, I come out of meditation, close my eyes, follow my breath, find my inner sense of self, my gray point. I train the physiology to function from there. I slowly open the eyes. I I stay with that breath as an anchor, and in each moment, I train my awareness to be in that present moment to where there's just one moment of awareness eventually. As I grow the neuronal structures, I become unconsciously competent with my breath and where I place my awareness. Then I practice when I go to sleep at night. As I go to sleep at night, I return to the breath, change my focal plane of awareness, and as sleep comes, the body goes to rest, but my awareness stays there. Then I observe the body sleeping, and then I watch my dreams take place in another world, right? And as I wake the next morning, my awareness is there. I see that subconscious aspect of myself that is ruling over me or that is controlling my thoughts, feelings, emotions, desires. But I do not act upon them as I once did and create a logical framework for why I think it's happening in my waking state. Because my dream state and my waking state, or my conscious mind and my subconscious mind, are both available to me from this third perspective. Most people, right, are living in a world in which they are severed. These realities are severed, right? There's a severance from waking state and dreaming state. There's a severance from their conscious mind and their subconscious mind. That is mental illness. It is what Carl Jung would say is, until you make the unconscious conscious, you will become, it will rule over you and you will call it fate, right? And it is this incompetency to regulate our awareness and to regulate our focal plane of awareness and our breath that keeps the subconscious and the conscious mind separate. It is people's fear and inability to look deep within themselves into that void and realize that they are that space. And then the preoccupation of the mind with thoughts, feelings, emotions, and desires to hide from that fear. That keeps us in a place of mental suffering. That keeps our physiologies from being fully awake. And that is mental illness. It starts with the first breath you take with a doctor slapping you on the ass and knocking you out of that breath, right? And it continues for most people's lives, and most people are just mentally ill, running around in these thoughts, feelings, emotions, and desires, and are never awake to the reality that's in front of them. And so it's not mystical, though. It's not a moral dilemma. It's just a physiological thing. In the same way that diet and exercise, getting your body healthy, there's just some basic things that you have to do. Getting yourself mentally healthy, there's just some basic things that you have to do. You have to learn how to regulate your breath, regulate your nervous system, change your reference frame, and practice until you fully see through the night and you see your subconscious and you become integrated with it. Like not in a psychological, mystical kind of way, but in a moment to moment, I'm actually experiencing it type of way. I'm awake to it. And it's very hard to do because most people aren't doing it, and the techniques aren't really understood, and it takes a long time to retrain or relearn that type of physiological functioning. Your body naturally wanted to do it when you were a kid, but you were pushed away through it when you were in theta state, and that programming changed you. Everyone. Like 99.99% of people. And so that's why the tanks and putting the body in an optimal state and the psychedelics to break up the stresses and the reprogramming quicker and the breath and all these things. And that's why it just speeds that process up. You can do it naturally. That's the way I came about it. But that's the little conversation that I have to have with people when they're like, is it about mental illness? And then you have to confront them and say, right, you can't go direct at it. You have to say 99.9% of the people, which includes them, right? And me most of the time, right? And so that's it, right? Like that's what I'm doing, is finding those frequencies that keep the body in that optimal psychological state, and then mapping all the different layers and levels and those types of things. It gets complicated from there, but that's the basis of it, is to literally wake people up. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, give me some feedback, ask me some questions. Maybe I'll make you a video like this one. Once again, this is Michael Gray with the Frequency Genome Project, reminding you the purpose of life is life itself. May we live as long as possible at the highest level possible. Have a good one.